Hello, and it's good to have you here at the Cat and Sam show. And how you doing there, Miss Cat? Miss Cat. It's gonna be one of those days, I think. Hi, Sam.
Hi, Kat. How are you today?
I
Apart
just thought I
from
was having a show all by myself. I guess
yes. Sorry about that little
the Cat and the Cat
misunderstanding.
show.
The Cat and the Cat show. Absolutely, meow. No, I'm here. I'm here.
All right.
So yes, apologies, misunderstanding, but
So I thought we could talk this today about the. We had the Super Bowl over the weekend,
yes,
and
we had it over here as well. Interestingly,
right now you guys are getting all hooked into our stuff. Um, And that Tubi commercial that came on, did you see about that?
yes, I have. I have. So this, I mean, I didn't see it. I have to admit, I didn't watch the Super Bowl. Um, I mean, I don't know whether we'd have had the same um, advertising or not. I don't think we do. So, but I haven't seen anything about it over here. But you fill us in on what happened.
Well, there was a TV commercial done by uh, Tubi or Tubu, um, that ran the announcers for the Super Bowl talking to each other, and then it clicked off as if somebody was using the remote and went down to see what was on the Tubi channel and what was streaming. And it lasted for about 15 seconds, and then it went right back to the game. And people in bars, cocktail people were getting drinks thrown at them because they thought somebody was messing with the remote.
Right. So the advert made it look like somebody had changed the channel as it was about to go back to the play, and which is a clever idea. It's in all the film, like somebody interfering and it going to a different channel and stuff like that. But I did see some of the stuff that you sent me about online about, on the one hand, people were finding it funny and really clever, but there's been this massive, unexpected consequence, which is abuse, and domestic abuse went through the roof or something, didn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that 15 seconds is all it took.
Is that all it was?
15 seconds of something going awry that nobody had any control over except for two, because they didn't do any research on would there be any adverse reactions.
Impact.
Yeah.
So they didn't do any risk assessment then.
Right. And I've had incidences, and I know people who have had incidences with controlling the remote, and people getting angry about that, who has the remote, and one person was watching a news channel all the time, and the other partner didn't like it, so they would hide the remote and keep them from watching TV.
The remote is, yeah.
But I think that, the big thing is 15 seconds and people lost their excuse my language, but they did. I don't understand why anybody, and I don't understand, and I do understand, because things weren't going right, and there's all this emotion and the people have about their teams. Um, there's been an outcry of, you know, oh, it was just a joke. And funny, we talked about that the other day. And people are talking about how I lost my train of thought, but people are talking about how emotions go awry. We already know that Super Bowl is, and the World Cup and that at these sporting events is really high on domestic violence. Um, I kind of wonder why it just wasn't thought about.
Well, there's a bit to
Interestingly
unpack
enough.
there. I mean, so number one, the remote control does seem to be the possession of the remote control is definitely seems to be another red flag that is very common. It's the same, same here. Like the other is the fact that it only took 15 seconds, and I read some of the stuff. I mean, whole families being, terrorized, being shouted at, screamed at, hit. There was one woman, she packed her bags and left immediately after that. But there's, in a way,
Holes in
we can
walls.
say why did Tubi do it? But what's brilliant about it, actually, is this is just showing how quickly it happens. This is the broad range of how it happens to people, and this thing about control. Maybe I don't know what it is about. I mean, I'd have to speak to somebody who was a big football fan, either American or soccer fan, to understand what it is about this that leads to this behavior. Because all sorts of people apologized afterwards, and you were saying, didn't you, that like whole bars were people turned on whole bars. So who's got the remote? Who's done this? That is not a sane reaction to a 15-second channel change, even if it is the Super Bowl. So there's lots of
Well,
questions there to ask.
I've sat and watched TV and had the remote and hit a button to um, to do something like rewind or something like that, and the remote hasn't responded the way that I wanted to, or mishit a button, and had people immediately get irate that I've been around because I must be doing something wrong with the remote. And then you hand off the remote to whoever to see if they could do any better with this stupid thing. And they have the same problem. And, there's no accountability. Like, I'm sorry, I went off, it's just like this thing, there's jokes about it, the man has the remote and he's in control of the TV,
and like if you
and
have the remote and for some reason it's not working correctly, then you're stupid. But when
yeah,
if it happens, when the same thing happens to them,
I think
then
the other part of this too that I read too, and it wasn't in correlation with this, but it was actually an article that came across a feed that I was following, and ER nurses talking about the children come into the emergency room hurt because they got in front of the TV and somebody got mad at them because they were in front of the TV and blocked them being able to see the last play. And, I've talked a lot about like just the emotions that people have in watching a game in the male community who, they put on jerseys and so do women. But what I'm trying to get at is this inability to express, and then they all of a sudden can express all these things about the stats and the oh, I'm trying to think of the word, abilities of the player and how well that they their talent, and they just get all worked up in this my team's better than your team. And, you know, we have all this emotion around this activity. And in 15 seconds, we have, you know, some man that's calling his mother-in-law the B word, and she's not talking. She's over it.
Mm.
I mean, there's just all these fractures that happen, and they happen all the time in an abusive home. And I think that's the beauty of what happened in opening that up, and so that America could get a good look, and the world could get a good look at 15 seconds of somebody putting out there, and we have all this
A mass
rage. And
collective experience across the board
right.
for just one thing. It's one thing that happened. I mean, it's. But is it actually anything to do with the sport, or is it just that this has become an accepted place to express that kind of negative emotion? Is there something about sport itself that creates? I don't know. Does it make testosterone rise? Is there actually a physicality to it? Or is it
Well, you
simply, like I say, that this has been accepted because the sport, especially football in this country, for quite a few decades. I mean, we've got rid of some of the excesses of it in the sort of 80s and 90s of the hooliganism, but it's been commandeered as a space to express violence. And I just wonder how much of that is as an accepted place to do that on the whole. And I just wonder if, especially the higher up the Premiership and all of that kind of thing that you go, grassroots football stadiums, small little local town leagues and teams don't, their whole point is that they're family orientated. But the higher up the kudos and money tree you go, the worse the behaviour is of the teams, the players, and the fans. So
well, when you were asking
that's stuff that I would like to know, because it's a bit nonsensical, really.
when you were talking about the uh, in that statement that you just made, I was thinking about, does this happen in anything else? So I was thinking, well, in the Oscars, or in drama, we're maybe watching a performance, and we get into it, and we're like, excited, or you know uh, or thrown in different ways by the emotion that's being given to us. And if it's a really good performance at a movie, and we really like the movie, we may clap at the end because we're just so taken by it. um but brawls haven't really started. And then I thought about Will Smith
Mm.
and what he did in his decision, um, based on what a comedian said
Mm.
that he didn't like. And he took it upon himself to walk up on that stage and just slap him. And I know it was talked about a lot, but
Mm.
I, I was just thinking about, what gave him that thought process of, like, it's okay for me to get up on this stage and go hit this man.
Mm.
And, you go back to John Wayne, and I think there was one other one when Marlon Brando decided to have a Native American get up on the stage and talk about her oppression at the Oscars. And they said that somebody had to physically keep John Wayne from going up there because he wanted to kill her for making a statement. So, I think I think in thinking about it, there is I think the common thread is somebody interferes with, or something interferes with the activity that one views should not be interfered with, and they believe they are allowed to lash out. And if you take that and look at domestic violence, that's how it starts. The entitlement.
You've just taken the word right out of my mouth. I was going to say, to me, it's about entitlement, because, we watch, look at the films that we watch, that are full of violence, and get you sort of wound up and pumped, like you said. And nobody, we don't turn around and start attacking each other. It's interesting that there was an element of this with Will Smith, which is an arena where it's less known, but again, it's about that sense of entitlement, isn't it? And that's quite high in both arenas. But do you think it's more to do with the personalities and that actually the event itself, like in DA, the event itself is actually nothing to do with it? But like you say, we make jokes about who hogs the remotes and the remote control, and that,
Yes,
sort of men have to be in charge of the remote like they have to be in charge of the barbecue. It's, we've normalised this kind of controlling behaviour. What does it matter who has the remote control?
the car.
Because the whole, it is back to the driving in the car. That's what I was thinking. Because the whole point is it's supposed to be a consensus. So everybody in that bar, everybody in those rooms, in those houses, whether they were families or partners, mother-in-laws or whatever, the consensus was they were all watching the football. So why wasn't the assumption that they would all be upset? They didn't all get upset and start throwing things or screaming and shouting and swearing. Invariably, it was one male in each of the domains, or a couple of males who reacted like this. But I do think, like you said, it's a huge positive that there was this mass across the country 15-second experience where everybody experienced the same thing all at once, and it's highlighted just how intense those behaviours can actually be, and out of nowhere, and the impact of them.
Well, I kind of like Guy to talk about this a little bit, because he's had a couple of conversations that I think
that'd be brilliant.
Valid. Sorry to put you on the spot there, Guy, but I think that you were talking about the worldview.
Well, that's the term that you were looking for earlier when you were describing John Wayne and what they were going against, and they were going against John Wayne's worldview.
Yeah, that's true.
His view on how everything should be going, and somebody was butting against that. And people tend to really get upset when you attack their worldview, because that's how they view the whole world is. That's how they view, it's all supposed to be. And when you go against that, they really get defensive over it.
So like watching the football game, they're like all into it, and it's all about this game. I mean, we're at the end and it's all about this game. And then somebody makes a commercial and things aren't going the way that they should. And since they blow up, because they're entitled to, because everything should go perfect.
But that doesn't correlate with the findings that have been found that actually these violences still happen even when their teams win. So even when things go their way, these violences still happen around these events. So this is
Well,
this is why I
basically,
asked this is why I asked the question: is this just an excuse?
right, right. I agree.
You know,
I'm not saying that it is an excuse. You know, I teasingly told somebody, you know, it's funny because uh, Tubi or Tubu, which one is
what
it?
are
It's
they?
Tubi.
Are they a
Tubi.
streaming channel over there? Is that yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, they basically gaslighted people. They didn't mean to,
No,
you know, but they set something up and it blew up. And you know, the the powers that be didn't like it, and so they lashed out. Patriarchy lashed out. It didn't go the way they wanted to, so they lashed out. And then we are all like, "Oh, well, you know, it was just a misunderstanding, and you know, there's no accountability." And I think that's what, you know, at least that's what my take on this is. Where's your accountability for losing your stuff for 15 seconds because your show wasn't on? And
I was going to ask, kind of, has anybody sort of stepped in or stepped up to this information and this event, and sort of like said, okay, we need to look at this. We need to look at why this happened. What you know. So nobody's done that. Nobody's Tubi haven't.
no, I mean, there has been a little bit of talk about, you know, we should have this conversation and not let it go about domestic violence and how this was set up, and that nobody was held accountable, meaning the patriarchal system of having the right to lash out in such a big way, in a wave kind of way, you know,
Mm.
um, just from an event of 15 seconds of not being able to watch your game or the game that you wanted. I mean, that's why I was talking about the little kids that
Mm.
ER sees more kid injuries during the Super Bowl because they get in the way of the TV. I mean, it this stuff is not
No,
okay. It just
that's
isn't.
what I was just thinking. It's like
And
when and how did this become acceptable?
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
it's
And didn't you guy have a conversation about like some kind of emotional uh
Yeah, I talked to somebody who's gotten into the Super Bowl. I'm not huge into sports or anything like that, but that they get really emotionally invested in the game. Which, to go back on what Sam had asked earlier about people being about these guys and the abuse going up even if their team wins, I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're hugely emotional and have no way, and for some of them, have no way of um, excuse me, outlet, and the only outlet they're comfortable with is just more anger. So they just end up funneling even positive emotions into negative emotion, and I think that that's a big problem with some of them. Not all of them. I mean, you're going to have it all over the different places, and it's never okay. And I think a lot of people just frankly lose control and just don't even think about it anymore. They just go off, you know, or whatever it is. I think it's all dependent on the person that they're in. I mean, all these people are obviously got abusive problems, but you know that stem from different things and that kind of stuff. You know, maybe their team didn't win the exact way that they wanted them to. You know, they too close of a game, you know, so they got angry or whatnot, or they don't like the positive, you know, emotion because they don't understand it, so then they get angry at themselves and take it out on somebody else. I mean, there's all sorts of things that it could be,
well, yeah.
and that's not even counting the rioting you always get
No,
when
this
these
is what I
things
mean.
happen.
There is a kind of like there is a mass, you know, and I mean certainly over here, like I said, what was called hooliganism. I mean, there was an organised element to that being stoked, you know, and people being deliberately enticed and wound up. There's all sorts of things went on with it, but it's just, this is why I flip-flop between it being an outlet for repressed individuals, basically, and it just being used in as excuse because it's for some reason it's been allowed. Because we look at other sports, it doesn't tend to happen so much. Even contact sports, there doesn't seem to be the same correlation, even when drink and gambling are involved, like horse racing or like athletics or swimming. There doesn't seem to be the same association.
Right. What about, because rugby is so much bigger there, what about rugby?
It doesn't have the same, it doesn't have anywhere near the same reputation. I mean, obviously there are perpetrators, and that's there's even more contact and more violence, if you like, on the pitch than there is in football. So in theory, you would think out of the two, looking at them, the physicality of the people playing, whether they're male or female, but certainly the males, if you look, you would expect rugby to be to have the more violent fans and to have the bigger domestic abuse issues, but it doesn't. But then it has it does have a different culture around it. It has a different, a different culture, I suppose.
Well, I mean, I was involved with football and I watched it, and I can remember getting all dressed up in orange and eating oranges, making sure you did, I have friends that light candles to make sure that their team is supported in the heavens. All kinds of things. But,
I enjoy a football match. I'll like shout and do all the rest of it with everybody else, and dependent on it's. I've enjoyed them.
Right. I can't imagine the game goes off for 15 seconds, and I'm going to slug the wall.
Yeah.
Or I'm going to call people names, or I'm gonna, my head's gonna explode with just this rage.
Or throw the remote frustration at people, or threaten people in a bar. I mean that hair trigger, to and this, it's like, but we know that. So there was a blanket across America in those 15 seconds, a big chunk of the society who got a taste of what it's like living in these relationships. Now, if that isn't...
Oh, that's a great point.
If that isn't able to be utilised by activists and people like ourselves, but certainly in America, and lawmakers, and to say, this, there you go. You had 15 seconds of it. You've had that taste. So that's that. If that isn't, if that isn't sort of taken and run with by somebody, I'd be really, it would be a real opportunity missed, is how I feel. Because having people feel, even if it's just for those 15 seconds, and like I said, some relationships have ended because of it. It's good,
right, exactly.
Get out quick. But there will be, and also, where's the accountability for Tubi and the television company that showed this? Because there will be people that won't be on social media, who will have been beaten black and blue, who may well be dead because of this. So, that 15-second joke.
Well, and I wonder, what, you know, it, in the article that I sent you, there's a woman that had lived with the guy, I think, for a year, and no, she had been dating him for a year, and then she moved into him, and she moved in with him and been living with him for 2 months when this happened. And she packed her bags, because I think this is kind of a, well, we haven't even touched this. She packed her bag and she told him that she was done. She was just not going to have that kind of behavior. I mean, he punched the wall and yelled and screamed at her, and then he's apologizing for doing it because he didn't realize that the that it was a TV, that it was a commercial. And you kind of got to wonder, you didn't realize that it was a commercial, and so you're justifying your actions of punching a wall and yelling at this person that you claim to love because you didn't get to watch a game for 15 seconds. And you're really going to go there. Then she goes home because she's not accepting his apology. She goes home and is met by her family with, well, it's just a joke, because and now she's got what it feels like to have people say, it's just a joke. It was an accident, and people all over the United States were freaking out about it.
He's
You
sorry.
cut him some grace, cut him some slack. He freaking punched a hole in the wall, yelled and screamed at her. A mother-in-law got called a terrible name. Hey, but it's just a commercial. And I think you bring up a great point in saying, 15 seconds, and where's their accountability? Where, the National Football League has a organization called No More.
Yeah, which is global.
Which is supposed to be their right. And where where's their outrage? I don't think there has been any.
I mean, firstly, it doesn't matter. It is totally irrelevant whether that was a commercial, a massive scam, con, prank, whatever. It's irrelevant. It's their reaction. It's this. So that's the back to the phrase over here of pivot to the perpetrator. You're absolutely right. That reaction to a 15-second glitch, in effect, where, bearing in mind, remember, like, this advert was that somebody had changed a channel. So we're only talking about switching a channel back. That's all they would have believed. They believed needed to happen. Yeah, and it comes back. It comes back to entitlement, doesn't it? It comes back to all of those things that we've been saying. That shouldn't have happened in the first place. But there is an accountability needed by people like television companies. I mean, I've seen it over here. We've got we have dramas. We have dramas, period dramas, that are showing things like, I think we talked about this before, strangulation during sex is something sort of sexy and wonderful to do. And then we've got, 12-year-olds in their first kiss thinking that's normal. That's what you do, is when you kiss somebody for the first time, that makes it sexy for them. We really need to start looking at these things properly. But then that comes around to why we talk about what we talk about, isn't it? Is understanding.
I love going back to the whole community, or not community, but companies and government and what they should do. At the same point, what is society going to do about it?
You've tasted it now.
Right. I mean, yeah, right. So what's your answer? Oh, it was just a joke. Oh, Tubi just made a mistake. You have all these people in all these different locations that acted out in a very um, poor way of uh, in response to their show not being on for 15 seconds. And all we're going to say is, well, it just wasn't very well thought out, and sweep it under the rug, and make this little pile over here that we don't want to talk about. Well, we do want to talk about it here. At least here we do want to talk about it, because if if you're going to tell your daughter when she comes home and says that this happened to her, and not talk to her about how terrifying it was for 15 seconds of this man being totally out of control because his show wasn't on.
Actually being so in control, but violently in control, because his seeming control had been taken away. So it deflected it onto her. And this is part of what it is. It's the control. I mean, it's literally called a remote control. It's a control. But I was oh, darn it, I was going to say something. It's gone. It's gone.
It'll come back. It'll come back where it's supposed to. But you are correct. I mean, and they're choosing to react this way.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great point that you're making is, I said that they're out of control, because they are out of control. They look ridiculous, and they're acting ridiculous to something that is happened. I kind of want to hit that Will Smith thing again just for a second, because I was thinking about when he did that, everybody was kind of like just quiet.
It was shocking.
And it's kind of that way. You know what I mean? Nobody knew what to do about that. Somebody actually went up to Chris Rock and asked him if he was okay, which I thought was interesting. I liked that somebody did that. But there was a lot of people that went over and consoled
Will Smith.
Because he had so much pressure on him, because he was, up for the Academy Award, and he was up for that speech, and he was on edge, and somebody took it away.
Yeah.
John Wayne and his, I'm going to kill this woman because she dares to speak against what my worldview is. You and I, we dare to speak about what happens in homes all over the world. And
yes.
To me, it's just like, when is it going to stop? When are people going to look and go, okay, this is absolutely ridiculous?
Well, I think an interesting thing, if somebody were interested in doing it, or if it was collated, is to see the figures for this particular Super Bowl, and to see how many more incident reports there were, how many more deaths there were, how many more children were attacked because of this 15-minute slot. Because then you've got a real tangible, undeniable impact that people like politicians and TV companies and stuff have to listen to, because actually it's then costing money as well as lives, So I would like, if somebody, I don't know if, I mean, it probably won't be out yet because it only happened a few days ago, but we're lucky over here. We are lucky in that we have somebody who is recognising and counting, these women and children who lose their lives. But I don't know where we'd find those figures out nationally for the US around that particular Super Bowl, but they will be there somewhere. But it would be really interesting to compare and see what if any direct impact it might, because I think I can't see how it can't have had a direct impact in raising those figures, in which case everything around domestic abuse in the Super Bowl will have gone up as well. Like I say, including the costs, the taxes that pay for the police that have to go out, and the hospitals and the mortuaries and the court cases afterwards,
But, because you have parents telling you to go back and not that bad,
Well,
he's a
and
nice
dismissing
guy.
dismissing what's happened to her, dismissing what she's witnessed when she's very sensibly, and then, you know, and then we say to them, "Why didn't you leave?"
Right? Why didn't he leave?
She did.
Why
She's
did you
just
let...
left, and everybody thinks it's a joke. So
Well, yeah.
well, everybody doesn't think it's a joke. We know exactly why she's left. I applaud her, and I hope for whatever reason she's had to take it down, she knows she's not on her own. And I really hope she hasn't felt forced to go back to him by anybody. So,
Yeah, me too. I mean,
whoever she is, my heart goes out to her. And yeah, I believe her, we believe her, and we feel very much she did the right thing in the first place. In calling it out, leaving, packing her bags and leaving, and calling it out. There should be others as brave as her to do
yeah,
what she did.
and there's people that try to leave these relationships and end up dead.
Yeah, precisely.
That happens too, and they don't get to go back
No.
home. And I just had a visualization about, okay, so we're sitting and we have family, we have friends over, we have this celebration going on because we're watching this team play a game and they've worked hard all season to get here, and we're excited because we're rooting for one team or the other, or maybe we don't have a team, and everything is just good. You
Mhm.
know, people are enjoying themselves. There's chatting going on. There's conversation. We're getting to visit with people we haven't seen in a while. It's celebratory. And then a commercial comes on for 15 seconds and it goes haywire. It is so much like what happens daily
Mm.
in domestic violence and abuse. Something doesn't go right, and the perpetrator decides that it's okay for him or her to act out, although I'm going to say him because it's in a violent way. I'm not saying women can't be violent, um, but I think in this sport and in talking about what we're talking about, we're not getting an overwhelming amount of people coming forward and saying, my wife went crazy because the TV went off during this commercial, and then we're just going to shove it underneath the rug, act like it didn't happen. It happened. It happens every day in life in these relationships, and I think society needs to look at that and say, why was it okay for him to act that way? And then what's going on with the parents and society to say, oh, just stay because, you know, he just overreacted, you know. And and I think coming into these relationships or being in these relationships, y- you already have that tape in the back of your head saying it. Oh, just was a second. He didn't mean it. You
Mm.
the the target already has that wherewithal in them trying to negotiate that activity, and then you have society pressing up against them as well, and then you sit there as a society and you say, I just don't understand what there's the doors open, just go.
Yeah. So it's every which way, which is why we talk like we do, is to try and highlight those. And I hope, I hope somebody does pick this up and run with it. There is more comes of it. And, if anybody watching likes our content or what we do, or wants to leave comments, or subscribe if they, share, subscribe and ding the little bell below, that really helps. But yeah, it'd be great, keep these conversations going and keep highlighting these things and keep at it.
Yeah, give us some comments as to what you think about this big game, and the response in your communities is in your households and in your conversations about what you think about it. Think about it's okay for somebody to punch a hole in a wall and yell and scream and call everybody names. You think it's okay for the emergency room nurses to know that they're going to have more kids coming into the room that have been hurt because somebody couldn't see their TV for a game? Those are the big questions. Let's answer those
Yeah.
ones.
Well, let's talk about them, even if we can't answer them. We'll find the answers.
Right,
in there.
exactly. Start that conversation. All right.
So,
You know me, I like conversing with you, so
same here.
we'll see you back here in a couple of days.
See you soon, darling.
Take care.
Bye.
Hope to see you guys soon. Comment, like, subscribe, share.
Ding.
Ding.
Ding
Hit
that bell.
bell. Bing, bing, bing.
See you later.
Bye.